Hey guys, hey, it's Anne-Marie, and this is the Anti-HR channel. And on this channel, we talk about HR issues, current events that impact workplaces and employees. I want employees to understand their workplace rights and how to assert them if those workplace rights are violated. And I also share content to help people identify violations of their workplace rights so that they can cash out through negotiated separations with severance if they need to. So if that's of interest to you, please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, but do so constructively, and share this video with a friend. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about white supremacy and Black immigrants. And this is a topic I thought I had spoken about before, but when I was going through my videos and also recording the video I recently posted about my thoughts about nativism, growing nativism in the Black American community, and why I think it's very problematic and concerning, I realized that I had not spoken directly to Black immigrants. So y'all come to the front of the room. It's time for us to have a conversation. Because I do believe that the nativism growing inside of the Black American community is being promoted from outside forces. I do believe that. But I also believe that in everything that people choose to believe, there's always a little bit of truth in it. And then people are able, outside forces are able to take advantage of individual incidents to create a narrative, right? And that's where, racism comes from. It's how white supremacy stays on top. It's that you take a little thing that might have happened individually, and then you say everybody is like that. And I think that's very dangerous. But I do think that there are issues in the workplace that occur between Black Americans and Black immigrants that we need to talk about openly, especially where the issues are being perpetuated by Black immigrants. So I have done videos where I've talked about non-Black immigrants and how white supremacy has formed the way that they behave and their tendency to seek white proximity. And now I want to talk to us Black immigrants. And I feel that I can talk about this subject because I'm the child of immigrants. And so I have had an opportunity to observe some of these behaviors up close, and I'm going to call out some of them. Because I think if we as Black people are going to live in community, we have to own our errors and improve how we treat each other. I think one of the biggest tricks that white supremacy has played on Black people everywhere in the world is that it has made us believe the things that they have made up about us. I think it is important for us to understand that much of what white supremacy does is projection. They love to project the things that are true about them onto us. And a lot of us have bought into those things. And colonialism in particular has really created an environment in many places across the diaspora, whether it's Africa, on that continent, or across the Caribbean, that people have lived in countries that while they were not subjected to slavery per se, or slavery ended, but colonialism continued for a very, very long time. As I said in the last video, a lot of these countries didn't even get their independence until 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. That's not that long ago. And so colonialism was perpetuated. And then in other places where we have a lot of Afro-Latinos who come to America as immigrants, because I'm talking about y'all too, people moved to the U.S. for economic reasons because of problems in their economy perpetuated by the West, the United States government and others, to steal resources, same in Africa, where corrupt and authoritarian leaders were put in place to allow the U.S. and others in the West to control and take advantage of the resources, suck the resources out of the country. And people leave because of the impact of that. But they also leave with a certain level of acceptance for authoritarianism, right? And I think that's something we don't talk about enough, that a lot of people come to the U.S. for the economic benefits, and they don't care as much about the politics, as long as it doesn't impact their everyday life, which all of those chickens are coming home to roost now, right? They come, they buy into the narratives, the anti-Black American racial and racist narratives, and they seek to distance themselves from the Black American community in hopes that the things that they very truly observe and learn very quickly about how Black Americans are treated in the U.S. will not impact them. And they think that if they if they avoid having relationships with Black Americans, especially in the workplace, that they'll get the promotions, they'll get the bonuses, they'll get the elevation. And sometimes they do, but it never lasts. So I think it's really important for us to talk about this dynamic because it exists and it is harmful. And those of us who have participated in it need to own it and cut that shit out. Right? Now more than ever, we have to be in community with each other, and we have to own the things that we do that causes divisions, all of us in the Black community. And so today I want to talk about y'all, because I have observed some of these things at work and I have experienced them at work, right? And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that at the root of it is always white supremacy. And a lot of these behaviors are perpetuated and encouraged by white overseers, white supervisors, white management. A lot of times they will use people from Black immigrant backgrounds to oversee behaviors and actions, right? And to help them justify bad behavior and get away with it, to engage in discriminatory behavior and get away with it. And a lot of times, Black immigrants come from countries where they have already been taught that white is better. There's a lot of colorism in the Caribbean and in South America, Central America. There's a lot of colorism. And that all comes from colonialism and slavery, post-slavery, all of it, just like in the United States. And there's a lot of classism. And you mix those two things together and you have a lot of issues. In the Caribbean, there's a lot of colorism. I lived in Trinidad and Tobago, and Trinidad is a more multicolored, multicultural country. Tobago is more African. And I lived in Trinidad and I saw the colorism. And some of these things have changed and some of them haven't. There are a lot of divisions between Black people in Trinidad, for example, and Indians, right? Indians were brought to the island after slavery ended as indentured servants. Trinidad is now, I believe, majority Indian. It was, when I was living there, majority Black, but now it's majority Indian. Tobago is still majority Black. And a lot of the rich culture of the island is because of the integration of the Indian culture and Black culture. But then there are a lot of divisions. Then, of course, there's the white moneyed class, the Lebanese, the Syrians who also came there after slavery, and a lot of them are the wealth class, and there's a lot of colorism. A lot of them only marry each other. They only interact and with each other. I've seen it with my own eyes. They're what they call Trinidadian whites. It's an actual term, Trini whites. If you're Trinidadian, you know what I'm talking about. And they are people who are of Syrian and Lebanese background, and they have white skin. And while in America, they might not be considered white, on the island they are, and they're also the money class. They're the merchant class, along with the Indians. And sometimes they don't hire Black people. Sometimes some of the same things that happen occur. Okay, and those attitudes come over to the United States with those immigrants. Okay, same thing in other islands, not just Trinidad. If you look at even simple things like when I was a child, and I would look at the beauty pageants, right? And the beauty pageant was a big deal in Trinidad when I was a kid. As I shared in another video, Trinidad is one of the few countries who's had multiple Miss Universe winners. The women are absolutely beautiful there, right? Black women are beautiful generally, but some of the women in Trinidad are exceptionally beautiful. Same in Africa. I was always mesmerized in Kenya, especially, and in Ghana and some of these places, how beautiful the women are. And Trinidad has had, I know for a fact, 2 Miss Universes, I believe, and a couple Miss Worlds, right? And I noticed when I was growing up that a lot of them didn't look like me. The first Black woman to ever win Miss Universe is from Trinidad and Tobago. You can look it up. Her name was Janelle Penny Commission, right? She's multiracial, which is not uncommon in Trinidad. People will be Black, Indian, sometimes mixed with Chinese, etc., because all of those cultures exist on the island. And you would notice that there's a hierarchy of color. There's a hierarchy of who would even get to be in the pageant. I don't think it exists as much. The next Miss Universe was a woman darker than me, and she's absolutely gorgeous. Her name is Wendy. I can't remember her last name. Absolutely gorgeous. You can look her up. She was Miss Universe. I think she won Miss Universe in the late 90s or early 2000s, from Trinidad. And I was shocked when I saw her. I was shocked that they sent a woman that dark to represent the country. I'll be honest. And I was thrilled when she won, but I was shocked when I saw it because in my experience, there was so much colorism that I was surprised that she made it, but she was exceptionally beautiful. But Jamaica, look at the women that get sent to Jamaica to represent Jamaica, right? Look at South Africa, who has the audacity to be sending white, blonde-haired women to represent South Africa. And I know they, have allowed these Dutch people to call themselves African, but I think that's a reflection of colonialism as well. So it's really important to understand how colonialism has impacted a lot of countries in the diaspora in order to understand why it is that people behave the way that they do in work environments in the United States. And these are not excuses, because I don't think it needs to be excused. I think it needs to be understood, right? And then you add to that how Black American people are depicted or have been historically depicted in media. And I think media has played a huge role in how Black people outside of the United States view Black people in the United States. Because Black, American, not just Black, but American culture has been spread across the world. United States has done a really good job of marketing themselves as being exceptional and special and standing for truth, justice, and the American way and being the best country and all those things. And they've done it primarily through movies and television. Movies and television. That people have bought into this, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, and it's the land of opportunity and blah, 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 blah. People believe that stuff. They come to America and find out how much of a lie the American dream is, but they believe it, especially people in very poor countries. And that's why they are willing to go through so much to come to America in the first place. People go through horrible things coming across the border from multiple countries, traveling through multiple countries in South America, being robbed, essayed, all these other things to come to America because they believe the marketing. They believe it. And until they get there, they don't find out. They find out then that it's not true. I was talking to a young lady on a river cruise in Zimbabwe, right? Beautiful. We had a beautiful time. We had a really great conversation. And I was talking to her about what the United States was like and about why I moved to Mexico as a Black person. And she was really in shock. And she told me, she would have never thought that because of all the things that people see on TV about America. And that's what she said. And she's a makeup artist. She's living very well. She's successful. And I told her, stay in Zimbabwe if you can. Right? I told her, people come as Black people and they think that they're going to have a different experience from Black Americans if they just try to stick, with white people, and it will never work out because no matter what you do, you are still Black. And when push comes to shove, they will make sure you know that you are and that you are no different in their mind than Black Americans. You're just easier to manipulate. And so I explained, I told her my perspective, and she was like, she believed it, but she would have never thought that from the things that people see online and on TV and in movies. And I told her, America has a great marketing program, but I'm telling you how it really is, right? And so it's really important for us to understand that this has been years and years and years and years in the making. And it's why it's so cruel what the US government is doing now, because it has spent a significant amount of time trying to tell people that they're the best country, and the whole Statue of Liberty thing and land of opportunity thing, as well as doing horrible things to destabilize so many countries around the world so that their resources can be exploited, right? If you spend any time researching the things that the United States has done in Latin America, the things that the United States have done on the continent of Africa, and I'm not even talking about other countries, I'm talking about the United States of America, and how the government has actively been used its military and its intelligence agencies to undermine and overthrow governments just so that they could exploit their resources. I'm not making these things up. Google is free. Look at what they've done in the Middle East, in Iran, when they overthrew the government in Iraq. Why did they do that? For the oil. Look at what they have done in Latin America, what they tried to do in Cuba, but weren't successful. but how many times they tried to overthrow the government in Cuba when Fidel Castro came to power. And this is not about whether you agree with the government. If people select a leader, it's not for another country to decide that they don't like the leader. But time and time again, if the US government couldn't get a country to do what they want to this day, they would overthrow the government. And this is true in Africa. You can look at Ghana. You can look at Democratic Republic of Congo. There's so many leaders that have either been overthrown or assassinated in Africa simply because they wanted to put Africa and African people first. Look at what's going on right now in Burkina Faso. I am really worried about the leader there because I understand what he's trying to do. And it's just a question to me about whether or not he is going to survive because of what he's trying to do, which is to control his country's resources, right? Because the West likes to exploit the resources of third world countries, right? The cell phones that we use, the food that we eat, they all, in the United States, it comes from other places. Look at the interference in South and Central America and Mexico, all these different places. And it's all about resources. It's all about resources, right? And so we have to understand that people watch television, they watch movies, they believe what they have been told about the United States of America. They come to the United States of America, and that's when the facade begins to slip, especially now. But for the longest time, people have been coming because they believe that they could have opportunity. And in some cases, in many cases, they have been able to have economic opportunity, right? That they couldn't have in their countries. So they come and they learn very quickly that they're expected. It's an exchange. They're expected, in exchange for success, they're expected to treat Black American people badly. They're expected to disrespect Black American people. They're expected to do everything they can to distance themselves from Black American people. And they're messaged over and over through media that Black American people are criminals, they're lazy, they're this, they're that, all these different bad things that have constantly been perpetuated about Black people in America that are patently false, but are constantly perpetuated to keep the divisions going, because you got to keep people divided in order to control them. Divide and rule works. That's why they use it. And so it's not an accident that we have these interactions in the workplace that are problematic, because you don't realize as an immigrant that you are also being used and manipulated. I think most people don't start to figure a lot of these things out till way later in their career, when they get what Paul Mooney said, everybody's going to get their N-word wake-up call. And everybody gets theirs. That's a fact. And some get it sooner than others. Some get it later than others. And I think a lot of immigrants, you think that if you do what they want you to do, you will be successful. And you'll be successful for a while until you outlive your use. And then you'll get your wake-up call too. Right? And so I think it is very important for us as a community, especially Black immigrants, to understand you've been lied to, you are being used, and stop allowing yourself to be used against people that look exactly like you and have a common history and ancestry as you. It's very important that we recognize these things and that we behave differently, especially now. We have to recognize these things, and we have to do what we all can individually and collectively to push back against these narratives about different parts of our community, because we have a common community. We have a common ancestry. It's Africa. And we need to all commit to being helpful to each other, especially at work. And I've had many stories from people that come to me on discovery calls. And my discovery call calendar is now open. So you can, get on my website and book a discovery call if you need to talk to me about a workplace issue. But I've had people come and talk to me about feeling targeted and discriminated against by Black immigrant supervisors. And I want you also to know that discrimination based on race and nation of origin is illegal. And if you are discriminating against Black Americans in your workplace in favor of people from your community, it can be documented and you can be fired. So if you can't do the right thing based on what is ethical and what is right to do, you better do it based on the fact that you could lose your job, because any of these kinds of things are illegal. People should be hired based on their knowledge, skills, and abilities. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with hiring, someone from your community if they're the best skilled person and the most qualified person. But it is not okay to discriminate. It is not okay to target Black American people because of your biases and treat them differently at work than you treat people that are from your island or your country, etc. And I want to say that very clearly. It's illegal and it's wrong, more importantly, and it needs to stop. So it is very important. If you're engaging in this behavior, you need to understand that I'm here to teach people how to document these things. And I am always happy to help people go after people who are engaging this behavior who are Black, because it is not okay. It is not okay for a Black American to discriminate against someone from another country who is Black. And it's not okay for the reverse of that to happen. And in too many cases, the reverse of it is what is happening. And it all comes from the same problem of nativism and thinking that only people that come from your country or whatever should have things. And that's not cool. So I want to be very clear to you all that it's not okay to do that. And we see it happen a lot with other non-Black immigrants, and we talk about it. But I think we have to also talk about the fact that sometimes it happens inside of the Black diaspora community, because I have had my own experiences with people from the diaspora who I saw engaging in this kind of behavior. I had an experience in my last job with someone who was from the diaspora, from a country in Africa. I'm not going to say which country. And she was trying to collude to come for me. She didn't understand that I saw her from a mile away. I saw her from a mile away, and I actually used her to get what I ultimately wanted, which was an exit. And I knew she would be useful because I knew that she was proximity seeking. She was white proximity seeking from the first day. And so I used her. I used her because I could predict her behavior. I knew what she was doing, even though she thought that I didn't know. Okay? But I knew that she was someone who was going to try to play both sides against the middle, and that I couldn't trust her. So I only told her things that I thought would be useful, that I knew she would go back and tell Massa, and that it would ultimately help me. And it did. It got me the outcome that I wanted because I knew what she was doing from the first day. But a lot of times people don't see it. They don't see it, right? But I have learned how to read people, even people that look like me, because I judge people not by what they look like, but by what they do. Always pay attention to what people do, not always what they say. And even at work, just because someone looks like you doesn't mean they're your ally. So you always have to judge people by how they behave. Because in these days and times, you have to be careful with everyone at work. And, if you've watched Judas and the Black Messiah, if you know the story of Fred Hampton and so many others in the civil rights movement and across the diaspora, they often will use people that look like you to come for you. And so it's very important to judge people by what they do, not what they say. And it's usually the ones that are the most ingratiating are the ones that you cannot trust. But I think it's really important for us as a immigrant community, I'm the child of immigrants, to recognize that we don't have some special status. We don't have some special status, right? And when someone tells you that you're not like them, it's not a compliment. When someone tells you, oh, you're so articulate and you're not like them, it's not a compliment. And I can't tell you how many times in my career I had palm people say that to me and how many times I called them out on it. Because my response to that is, what exactly do you mean by that? Who are they? Who are the they that you're referring to? What do you mean? And they'll start backpedaling immediately. But too many of us think that shit is cute, and we think it's a compliment. It's not a compliment. It is a statement of racial bias, and it needs to be documented when you hear it and called out. And today they're talking about them. Tomorrow they'll be talking about you. The minute you stand up for yourself, they won't like you anymore. The minute they can't use you against people that look like you, they won't like you anymore. So don't think you're special. Don't think you're special, because you're not. We all are either going to rise together or we going to sink together. So don't allow yourself to be weaponized against other Black people, regardless of what their origin is, whether they're from the continent of Africa, whether they're from another country in the Caribbean. Because another thing we don't talk about in the Caribbean is all the inter-Caribbean schisms that exist. You know, one of the things I often will say is in the Caribbean, there's also a hierarchy, right? And Haiti tends to be at the very bottom. And a lot of people in the Caribbean think it's okay to look down on Haitians. And I think it's insane because I think we all owe, as Black people, so much to the island of Haiti. They're the first people who were able to fight as Black people and overthrow colonialism, kick them out, and win independence for their country. And they have been punished for it ever since, as almost a message to the rest of us: don't try this at home. And we all owe an incredible debt to Haiti. And as Black people, it is our duty, I believe, to fight and advocate for the people on that island and for the people who come to the United States as immigrants because of the destabilization that has been ongoing on that island. Do you know what Haitians are still paying France? Every time I read that, it just makes me so angry because they had the audacity to kick France out of their country. They shouldn't be paying them one dime, and the money that they have had to pay France should be given back to the country. That's just my personal opinion. But in the Caribbean, when you hear people talk about Haitians, it's always with this kind of derision, and they want to look down on them. And I'm talking about everybody else in the Caribbean: Trinidad, Jamaica, any other islands, Grenada, all of them. At some point, I've heard people from all those places talk about Haitians in ways that are very problematic. And I think respect and admiration is due to the island of Haiti and those people more than more than any other island in the Caribbean, because of what they did and the blueprint and the path that they gave all of us, that it was okay to fight for your freedom. I wish they would make a movie about it, right? And so I just really feel a type of way about that. And I don't think enough people talk about the reality that these kinds of things exist in the Caribbean community that nobody talks about, right? Because no matter who we are, white supremacy has taught us that we should try to divide ourselves based on color, based on where somebody came from, based on all kinds of nonsensical things. And so these things play out in the Caribbean in lots of different ways, inside of countries and in the larger Caribbean. And you see it on the continent of Africa too. You hear people badmouth people from Nigeria, badmouth people from, this place, badmouth people, you hear, the South Africans talking smack about people in the West. All of these kinds of things to me are just fruit of the white supremacy tree. And it is not useful and it is not helpful. You don't have to feel better about yourself by putting another group of people down. I'm going to say that again. You shouldn't need to feel better about yourself by putting another group of people down. And we cannot win as a community if we keep perpetuating the stereotypes and the lies that white supremacy has taught us, not only about ourselves, but about each other. We have to choose intentionally to change the way that we think and to recondition our minds. And so as members of the Black immigrant community, I am charging you with the responsibility to do that. It is not just on Black Americans to do it. It's on all of us to do it. And because so many of us are in positions of power, because they think that we're easier to manipulate and control, that's the only reason. We have a responsibility to recognize that and to use our positions of power for good and not for evil. It is our duty. It is our duty. And to let them know when they think we ain't like them, that we are. That was always my goal, to make sure they knew. As a matter of fact, I am just like them. And proudly so. So I want to charge each of us in the Black immigrant community to make a decision and a choice to do better in this regard. It's not just about advancing people who are from your island, your country, your tribe. It's about helping to advance all of us as Black people. Because we either rise together or we fall together, especially now. Nobody's going to be safe. If you want people to advocate for your liberation, you have to advocate for theirs. And the reality is that Black Americans laid the blueprint that all of us across the diaspora have followed to try to seek our liberation and our freedom. And so we have a debt that has to be repaid. And we need to treat everyone in our community with respect and dignity and provide support in the workplace for each other and protection in the workplace for each other and have each other's back in the workplace. Because we are all, at the end of the day, from the same place, Africa. And we need to start acting like it. Especially now, we need to act like it. So I hope that this video is helpful. I hope that you will take the information in the spirit in which it is given. I am not interested in hearing about what individually happened to you in your workplace. That's still not an excuse. Individually, people are going to do things that they shouldn't do because all of us are not at the same place in terms of our consciousness, our critical thinking, etc. But when you know better, you should do better. And so I'm not interested in hearing what happened to you at this job and why you don't like, quote, them, unquote. If I hear any of that, I'm gonna block you because I want to hear it. Individual people are always going to do bad things. People in your family do bad things to them. To you, you still speak to them. You still help them. You still try to do the right thing by them. So it's the same thing. We got to treat each other like family because that's what we are. So we have a responsibility to do the right thing when we know what the right thing to do is and hope that we can bring other people along who aren't where we are yet. But we all need to do better. And I think too many of us feel like Black American people need to do all these things, and we're not doing enough ourselves. And so I really want to charge immigrants who are Black to consciously think about these things in our interactions in workplaces and elsewhere, and to behave better and to do better, and not to buy into the rhetoric that some of us are seeing on social media that are intended to cause division. That's why they're, getting people to put these things up there is to cause division. And so we have to make a decision that we're not going to buy into these narratives and that we are all collectively going to do better, treat each other better, and be there for each other. So I want to make sure I got this video out there and put it up there because I've been thinking about this for a while. And I actually felt like I had done a video on this topic, but when I was looking for it, I didn't see it. So I was like, let me go ahead and make it because I do feel like we need to own the fact that some of us ain't acting right. And that colonialism and white supremacy has impacted us as well, just in different ways. Slavery, colonialism, all of it are the children of white supremacy. And so while you may not have had slavery in your country, you definitely have colonialism and still having it in many places. Because when you're living somewhere and somebody else gets to call the shots and you don't even get taught why the British, why do you speak English? Why are you even speaking English in your country, right? For example, in Africa, when I go to Africa and I go to countries in Africa and I'm like, the whole reason people are speaking, you go to one country, they're speaking French. You go to another country, they're speaking English. Why is that? Colonialism. I think there's also one country in Africa where Spanish is the primary language because of the Spanish. It was the one country that remained colonized by Spain for a very long time. I'm gonna put the name on the screen. I actually want to go visit there. And then there are all these countries where they speak French, where they speak Portuguese because the Portuguese colonized them. So it's really important, if you don't know enough about your country's history and why you speak French or why you speak, go spend some time learning about it and understand that the civil rights movement is what laid the blueprint for a lot of people to decide to liberate themselves in other places, in the Caribbean, and on the continent of Africa. Black American people, as always and so many times, were the blueprint for that. Haiti, the blueprint for that. So these are not people for you to look down on. These are people for you to show the utmost respect and appreciation. We got to do better if we're going to survive what is happening, not just in the United States of America, but in the world right now. There is a turn towards nativism happening across the globe. These Western countries that have destabilized so much of Africa, South America, now are all closing their borders. They don't want anybody to come, without recognizing that maybe if they hadn't done all the things they had done in these places, people wouldn't be trying to leave. So those who are in the United States especially, we have to have appreciation and respect for Black American culture and for Black American people. And in the workplace, we all should be trying to help and support each other, not being at odds and creating divisions and narratives that are not useful and in fact are not true. We have to start treating each other as individuals and not saying, because I had this one bad experience over here, all Black American people are bad, Or I had this one bad experience over here, so all people from Africa are bad. There's too much of that happening in our community, and it is not useful. Somebody called me a name when I was in elementary school, so I don't like black American people. Somebody called me a name. And I'm not saying that these things don't happen, but we have to understand why they happen, where they come from, and who it advances. Whose interest does it advance for us to be divided? And that's why we have to choose not to be divided and to support each other. So I'm going to stop here. I hope that this gave those who watch this something to think about. I hope you find it useful. Please comment, but comment constructively. Remember, there's no democracy in my comment section. So comment constructively and thoughtfully. Share this video with a friend. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Hit the subscribe button, share it, comment, and I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.